So, Tyler, what's kind of your pros and cons of Jim Harbaugh potentially being the coach of the Chargers?
Yeah, the pros for me is that this is the experienced coach that I'm looking for that is a proven winner at every level. And that is what's been thrown around over and over again with him. But it is true. And the Chargers need not just an offensive reset or a defensive reset or whatever. Like the Chargers need an organizational, cultural reset, even just starting from the stand. So after the or during the Broncos game, when they mentioned that the Chargers had Justin Herbert had only used a verbal stack, or sorry, he had never used a verbal cadence during their games that entire season. A former offensive lineman for the Chargers reached out and said, I don't recall any other time the Chargers have been able to use a verbal cadence at home, except for against the Giants that one year, and they stunk. The Giants were absolutely terrible. Otherwise, it's been a shit show in the stands because of the lack of fans and a lack of enthusiasm. And obviously everything on the field is what we've seen on the field. The Chargers are charging. They're currently, I don't mean this to be like a personal thing, but in terms of the organization, they are losers. They are chokers. They charger. They put the definition of chargering on my screen against the Raiders. This is who the Chargers are right now. And fans don't care. It's the lowest my fandom has certainly ever been. And you're losing. And so you need someone who can change the culture of your entire organization. And it's kind of for better or worse. You know, way back when we were talking about Urban Meyer, sure, he was like seventh on my list of the guys that you could add. But the reason for Urban Meyer was, look, we're going to have at least, for better or worse, we're going to have a culture shift. Things are going to change. Now, dodge that one. But with Jim Harbaugh, it is going to be a significant culture shift. And the Chargers absolutely need that right now. They need direction. They need to bring, like you, I think you listed here in the pros, physical and aggressive identity. What is the positive identity for the Chargers at any point? I don't know, other than losing. It's all basically negative. There's no identity outside of, ooh, Justin Herbert saved us this week, or oops, darn, offensive line didn't protect this week, and the defense sucks. Keenan. That's it. There's no identity. Jim Harbaugh does bring an identity. He brings a winning culture. He brings an identity. They are aggressive. Even just looking at the Broncos, I don't know how aggressive Peyton has been. I haven't really followed the Broncos a ton, but the last time I looked, when we were preparing for the Broncos show, they won like 2 of their 1-score games the previous year, and they were up to either 4 or 5 by the time that we had covered them prior to Broncos week. Like there's just a shift that needs to happen that goes beyond just drafting one better player or calling one more play. It needs to be a culture shift. The Chargers need to stop charging. I'm sick of watching it. I'm sick of covering it. And now we've watched the Chargers blow the hugest lead in the playoffs a year ago, and then not give up the most points in franchise history a few days ago. This needs to end. It's got to stop. And honestly, I can't. This is probably the last thing I'll add to this. We can't wait for another ramp up period. We can't wait for. Now we can wait depending on the coaching hire, but generally we can't wait for a ramp up period for this team to get going in a few more years. Now, it might be more of a 2025 team given how many changes they're going to have to make, but they can jumpstart earlier and not have to wait for the ramp up period for some of these first year guys. I assume with Harbaugh, I'm not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl in year 1, but there's just less things to figure out. You already get the media, you get the day-to-day, you get everything about it, you get being a head coach, you get the responsibilities, the phone calls you have to make, the sponsors you got to talk to, like all that stuff is already covered when you have an experienced head coach. So to me, more than anything else, the Chargers need a complete culture change. That does not mean that can come from a first-year head coach, because some of these guys can definitely change the culture of your team. And we've just seen that. Shane Steichen, Mike McDaniel, we've seen these guys. So I'm not like against that. But to me, this is kind of both the safest bet, potentially, and I think also partially the highest ceiling. He's won at every level. He has won. And I think the Chargers just need this mindset shift. We're not just waiting to lose. We're going to win. That's what we need. And as a fan, I need to feel that again.
Yeah, I think that's very well said across the board in terms of the credibility that Jim Harbaugh would bring to you. And like, I think a lot of people are clamoring for Bill Belichick, but I think more than anybody else, Jim Harbaugh gets you to that table where it would turn around how the fan base feels about the team in 1 second, and of course there are other, comparisons here, but the thing with Jim Harbaugh, excuse me, that I love the most is that physicality that his teams have always played with. I mean, like you look at across the board of like how the Stanford Cardinal played, how the 49ers played, how Michigan has played. Physicality is their core identity. And some of that I think maybe doesn't play as much in the NFL these days, but I think it's a step in the right direction from a physicality, from an aggressive standpoint. And I think at the same time, like we talked about the offensive line issues, and I still believe in the players that they have, but a lot of it is just like how they are being coached and like how they are, approaching these things from a game plan perspective. Jim Harbaugh is going to come in and fix that. Like you are going to play physical in these with Jim Harbaugh as your coach. And I think there's a lot of things that you can talk about with Jim Harbaugh regarding his personality, but so many of his players have come out and said like, yeah, like he's a little bit tough to work under, but he's going to make sure that we are flying around every single day of practice, every single game, every single second, because that's how he coaches. That's what he believes in, is that physicality, is that aggressive nature. And I think also he just makes things easier on his players. His players have that confidence to go out there and play to their best ability. And I think like in a weird way, this current season where he's been suspended for 6 games has only like strengthened his reputation of who he is as a leader. I mean, you have his assistant head coach, Sharon Moore, like crying in an interview because he loves coaching under Jim Harbaugh so much. And, you have all the free Harbaugh stuff from his current Michigan players and like all the bet things or whatever like that. Like, how many other programs like really would have been able to go undefeated, win the Big Ten without their head coach for 6 games? If Alabama didn't have Nick Saban for 6 games, like where would they be? And like where would Ohio State be for 6 games without Ryan Day? Like it's a legitimate thing that I think has strengthened his coaching candidacy. The only thing really regarding Jim Harbaugh that I think is worth mentioning is like really what's his interest level in the NFL and specifically coaching the Chargers. There is that clip, obviously, of Mike Greenberg saying that him and Jim Harbaugh were like at a funeral, which like is the weirdest thing possible to me. Like they're at a funeral and they're just ranting about how much they love Justin Herbert. It's a weird thing to say, honestly. I just have such a hard time like wrapping my head around it. But I would understand why he likes Justin Herbert so much theoretically,
Yeah.
because Justin Herbert has always reminded me of Andrew Luck. Like they are so similar from a style standpoint, from a physical ability standpoint. So it would make sense to me that Jim Harbaugh would really like coaching Justin Herbert. The negatives, I guess, really it is his personality. Like he does have the tendency to rub people the wrong way. He's had a really tough time with like the Michigan, I think it's the president. They've had a really like rocky relationship. Obviously, things went really sour with the 49ers. I don't know if things ever went that sour with Stanford, but it is an interesting thing to talk about. Like, would he be able to come in and would the Spanos family be willing to really like deal with his personality across a longevity thing? Because again, for me, I'm trying. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking. I apologize about that. But for me, I want a coach to be here for the long haul around Justin Herbert, and I don't know with 100% if that's the case for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think the one, and really the most important thing is Justin Herbert here. If he reminds them of Andrew Luck, awesome. I think that Justin Herbert is uniquely in who he is perfect for Jim Harbaugh because he can handle it. He can take it. And this is a guy that was headed to med school. Like he was going to, 4.0 in biology, he was going to go to med school. He's the kind of football psycho junkie, I want to just, take all of it in. I want to be coached. I want to be pushed. I want to be better. I want to be my best. And, I'm not saying he has to be best friends with Jim Harbaugh, but I think that Herbert is someone who absolutely would respond to this. Not everybody can. I can't say that for everyone. I would have loved to see like Rivers and Harbaugh yell at each other for an entire season.
Facts. That would have been funny. Yeah.
It would have been funny, and they probably would have won. And they maybe hated each other the whole way, but they would have won. But no, I think Herbert is a particular person that would respond very well to this. Now, upstairs, we'll see. But listen, at some point, just go count your money. You know, like if Harbaugh comes in and wins and you don't like him all that much, look, dude, we all got to work with people we don't like a whole lot. But if they're making you money, I'll tell you what, man, do not care. I do not care one bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jim Harbaugh is he number one on your list then?
Sorry, of course I unmute or mute and then I missed the button 37 times. Yes, Jim Harbaugh is my number one.